Live streaming is on.
Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fialka. Today is March 4th, 2022. We want to thank Clinton Ignatoff and his amazing podcast, Concern Medicine. Thank you for hosting us, Clinton. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Stephanie Barber. Is that the correct way to pronounce it? Where are you calling in from, Stephanie?
I'm from Baltimore, Maryland.
How cool is that? Well, the first question is easy. What's the best thing for a human being?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't really think that things are better or worse. I mean, I guess I would take umbrage with the idea of something being the best thing. The best thing for a human being is probably different at every moment and different at every different place that a person would be.
Yeah. Super cool. I like that answer. I actually got that answer. My brother had a pizza party for his daughter when they were all like teenage girls, 12 to 14. And I went around because we were hitting on getting a free piece of pizza. And I went around, I says, hey, could I ask you all a question? And I asked them, and we got to this one, and she said, nothing's best or worst. It's all just is. So I love that answer because no one really says that answer besides her. So I appreciate that. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
I hope not to just, I'm not exactly sure the construct of your interviews, and I don't want to just give the same thing, but maybe I am very much a relativist. It's different at different times of my life, different times of the day. I probably am I'm a reader. So books, the written word, music. I like to get information from that. I like to get information from walking around and being in the world.
Well, no, that's good. Let's stop there. And just to clarify, all the questions, like at the beginning, some of these questions are, is it more this or more that? And again, you put in the context you want. You can say for right now, it's that. But in saying reading, I'm just curious, did you become a reader or did you gravitate towards reading because your parents were reading as an example? They told you to read, or you sort of picked it up on your own?
My mother is a big reader. Neither of my parents are the kind of people that tell people what to do. Like they didn't say you have to read or you have to do your homework or you have to come home. It was more of like a wolf scenario. My father didn't read. He's reading a lot right now. I just sent him the new Louise Erdrich book, and he's really digging that. But he mostly, he loves music and films. My mother was a big reader. My older sister was a big reader. And I think when I was a kid, I would see her reading and feel really alienated from her and be like, where are you? Come back to me, because she was somewhere else in the story. So maybe seeing her read.
Cool. And why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I don't know, but all of the species do it in very different ways. I really love this book by Franz de Waal called Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are?
Yeah.
And we're just talking about animals, like non-human animals. But the whole book is excuse me, I just got back from teaching a 6-hour class. I'm kind of hungry and spaced out. A lot of the premise in that and a lot of like sort of contemporary ethology is thinking about non-human species as a template for human interaction as well. So sometimes I think humans gather, our use of culture as a gathering is kind of excessive, like hoarder, like Jane Bennett, Vibrant Matter, like thinking about hoarding. I did a project for an artist who was Michael Ballou, who was doing an installation at the BMA, Brooklyn Museum of Art. And he asked, I think 4 or 5 of us as writers to write in response to his project, which was in the loose gallery of the Brooklyn Museum of Art, like I think the 4th and 5th floors, which are the visible stacks. They're they're part of the collection, but they're not necessarily on display. So the whole floor is like a little bit darker and it's a little bit colder and everything's just stacked up. And I would go, I live in Baltimore, so I would go to New York a couple weekends in a row to sit in the galleries and write, to respond to the space. And there's just like vitrines, floor to ceiling, full of pewter bowls or drawers, modernist jewelry. And I just kind of got repulsed by the hoarder nature of humans and the sort of anthropocentric assumption that every human creation and utterance and idea is like, we need to save this. This is part of our culture. This is, a human thought of this. I don't know.
Oh,
I mean, certainly as an artist, I'm careful with my work, and I'm careful with the work of people whose work I live with. But in another way, let it burn.
yeah, no, I appreciate what you just said because I've been a dumpster diver for almost 4 decades, and it's ridiculous because people go, "That's so cool." Like, it's like people buy their clothes at Goodwill or whatever. And I says, "No, it's horrible. It's like I go to Costco every day and I don't pay. I'm still a fucking consumer. I'm still hoarding this shit." And it's like unbelievable what I find because I find modern art and experimental films and everything, but it's something I'm always navigating, and I appreciate you bringing that up. A few more questions on thinking. Do thoughts create emotions?
Well, like if you're thinking about like cognitive behavior science, the difference between emotions and feelings one is sort of a physiological expression of a response, and one is a thought. Yeah, so I guess it depends on through which lens you're looking at that.
Yeah, that's good because I always say you can't separate feeling from thinking, but you can because humans invented the word. So you bringing up cognitive behaviorism was really good. I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank.
I just want to go on the record as saying all of these are too deliberate for me. I want to go on the record as not going on the record. I have a sort of a feeling that saying something specifically, I like to just think an idea, but I don't want to like legislate for it. So I'm going to answer that question, but it's not like a golden rule in my life. I
Totally,
can change at any minute. Um,
totally understand. In fact, my mom said the same thing. She goes, "Everything I said today, if I answer your questions, it might be different tomorrow." I'm definitely not trying to hold you to your answers. It's an ongoing, like, Mobius strip. Like we can, I embrace contradiction. You can flip it. We could do another one in 2 weeks and you could answer them all differently. I welcome your reactions
Yeah,
to
I'm
all.
not asking for your permission. I'm just saying it for the record. I
Right,
don't
right,
believe
right.
I don't have a fixed view of the world. So that's what
Yeah.
I'm gonna say. So
In
right now
in
I'll say I
fact,
don't believe, well, go ahead.
well, in fact, you resonate with the line I always repeat by Marshall McLuhan. Understanding is not having a point of view. So most people think, "Oh, I understand it because I'm for it or against it, or I agree or disagree." He said the big picture is studying patterns, pattern recognition, you get a comprehensive awareness. Now in your lonely teenage room, you can go, I love Facebook or I hate Facebook, but we live in a Facebook world. So we're trying to suss out how it shapes our behavior. So that's sort of what we're doing here, is just trying to suss out how human behavior is shaped by spoken word, printed word, art, Zooms. So you get it. I mean, I want to psychoanalyze every one of my questions, and that's what I like. When somebody gets into really thinking about and hearing what the question is.
But you
That's fine.
didn't let me yet.
Well, I know. I just wanted to let you know that. So sorry. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so yes, I feel as I suppose you're saying McLuhan did, in the like endless lability of responses, and it's really important to me to not identify as a fixed entity with fixed opinions. But so right now I'll answer. What was it? I don't think what?
I don't know what I think until I.
Okay, I don't know what I think until I say it out loud.
Yeah. In fact, that's what McLuhan says. I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's endless. Can humans think without language?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And there's so many yeah, examples of that. I mean, and also like the clarification between written and spoken language, or, like what is the width of a language? I think that the assumption that consciousness comes from language, which is, one of the sort of like philosophical templates of, pretty classic understanding of where consciousness comes from. It's so anthropocentric. I think there's a lot of different ways of thinking, which is, depending on how we define thinking in that question, um, just a processing of information. How do we process our sense interface, the sounds, the sights, the smells that we have? What is the cognition? Thinking isn't only the kind of organization of language.
Beautiful. Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Stephanie, what do you do when language doesn't work, when it breaks down?
I guess I also want to say, like Chomsky, so suspect. Like, when's he going to find that part of the brain? It's a little bit doesn't quite hold up much anymore. What is the question?
What do you do when language doesn't work, when language breaks down?
What do I do, or what should one do?
And again, you put it in the context you want. I say, what do you do? So you can put it in the context you want.
Yeah, I'm really just thinking. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, the other thing is silence is totally cool here. If you want to think and be silent, that's fine. It's like, that there's no rush.
Yeah, thank you. So when I said, what do I think, or what does one think? That's part of my answer. I'm not looking to you to clarify. I'm not asking. I'm really just thinking that out loud. There's a few different ways to think about the question. For me, language doesn't really break down. And I hope that I'm, as I age and as I go through changes and whatever disasters, the outrageous slings and fortunes that are coming my way, I hope that will continue to be true. Because I think a lot of the sort of lability and glamour of the thought that's packaged in language is sort of my wheelhouse. There's other ways of thought that I am actually not as I don't feel as confident or as playful in other spaces. So for me, language, even the thought of a language breaking down, is like kind of beautiful. Like I love a deconstructivist impulse through any kind of writing, but maybe particularly poetry. I think the ability of language to break down, like even to the phoneme level, like that Kurt Schwitter's poem, Sig, Siga, Siga, Sigaren, or tons of Jackson McLow's rewrites of the cantos, is also like a totally engaging offering. Broken language, broken tongues. What is that? Roberto Harrison. Yeah. I mean, right
Beautiful.
now there's a certainly a like a different kind of practical question about that when thinking about Russia invading Ukraine and thinking about like what does it mean for language to break down, like diplomatic discourse not being able to be effective if stopping a war is what you're trying to affect. So that's like a really different kind of breakdown in which the falling apart of language has like really perilous consequences, or potentially perilous consequences. Yeah.
Wow, you're really great with words, and I'm learning a lot. I really appreciate it. These are two Alan Turing questions from 1950. Is thinking a function of the soul?
Is thinking. I like how we're just like going through the like white male canon. It's cool.
No, yeah, I tell you, let me tell you,
We
we're
got
coming.
4 or 5 references.
You're right. And I'm coming up with Audre
all
Lorde
right.
and Yvonne Rainer in about 2 seconds.
They're all people. It's okay. Yeah. So say what the question was.
Is thinking a function of the soul?
Well, it's funny that that would be a question of his, because didn't he write the stochastic love letters? He did.
I'm not that
I'm pretty
clear
sure.
of that. I couldn't answer that for sure. Sorry.
I'm gonna say like I'm gonna put $28 on yes. I'm about 80% sure. So like these chance operation computer generated love letters, early computer generated. One more time, what is the question?
Is thinking a function of the soul?
I think you should invite like more neurologists to do these.
Well, some
No,
of the
I love neurology. I'm into it. I'm just saying.
some of the questions at the beginning are sort of neuroscience, and some of them are personal recollections and probes into your career and function of art and poetry. So it goes all over the place. So at the beginning, they're a couple neuroscience questions.
You got to form your following. Okay.
Yeah.
I do. Okay. This is crazy. When thinking breaks down, one more time, the question.
Is thinking a function of the soul?
Okay. So, I mean, this again is like Mary Shelley, Frankenstein. What is the soul? Yeah, the function of the soul. Not that I'm unwilling to grapple with the like giantest questions, but I mean, really, that's like an entire book. What is the soul? Where is the soul? Is the soul like a one person thing? I sort of have a feeling that consciousness is not owned in my body. It's one of the reasons I'm really hesitant to say, like, I believe in blah, blah, blah. Because I believe right here, right now, but, you know, factors in my environment, the other creatures that I live near, the trees, the snowstorms, the other humans, change my consciousness, change my belief system, and change my thinking. And I would like to say maybe even are my soul, so that my soul is not just stuck in my body, but is a one moving thing that is between all organisms on the earth, maybe, or within consciousness, one of those. And so the you know, all of the questions are sort of the same sort of sense, like what is the sort of ontological platform of whatever we think consciousness is, soul, Because thinking, in a way, we can understand the soul as a thought, or maybe I can understand the soul as a thought, a soul as consciousness, or your earlier question, soul as emotion. So maybe for me, a lot of those things, soul, emotion, thought, are not separate entities,
Yeah.
and have a kind of like an agency in which they press upon each other. I'm doing this. I'm thinking about this book that I'm always thinking about, but really I haven't read it in 25 years. So I probably should reread it before I keep, referencing it in my mind. But Manuel Delanda's book, 10,000 Years of Nonlinear History, speaks a lot about, well, it speaks about a lot of things, geological movements and cities and consciousness. And what I always think about it, which may be very different from whatever the text actually said so long ago, is just that everything is kind of a function of a system of pressures, weather, politics, my emotions, my soul as extricated from a thought, and the sort of delicate prescience um, of trying to categorize those. And I don't think it's invaluable. I mean, I think it's really, like, important to think about those things, but also maybe lightly, because recognizing that the wind might easily push them elsewhere.
Yeah. No, I get it. The second Turing question is, can machines think?
Um, so that, yeah, sorry, same thing. We have to define think. If thinking, and I think this is a Turing premise, um, is following out like going through a series of processes that have been given to you, then maybe yes. Um, and also, I think maybe humans were just like kind of complex computers. I know people hate that thought, because it does kind of eradicate a sense of soul if you think that soul is something that is God-given or magical. Um, but I mean, I guess I think one thing leading to another thing is probably magical. So I'll say, yeah, let them think. Let them think it's a burden. Let them do it.
I like that. So Audre Lorde said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rayner responded, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Um, okay, except that Yvonne Rayner is saying you have to expose the tool. So with implicit in the Audre Lorde is the if we make a new tool, then we're not using the master's tool. I'm certainly not the master. Unless we're like, I like that master in Master and Margarita, the cat who's like wall-eyed. I can't do wall-eyed. I can do cross-eyed.
Oh, that is great.
I know I'm good at cross-eyed, but I can't do wall-eyed. Yeah, I think so. The new tool, but you mean specifically a tool to dismantle the master's house, would be an
Well,
element of the master's house.
yeah, actually, let me answer that if I could for a second. When I open some of my questions with quotes, it doesn't mean you have to utilize the quote. The question is
Mhm.
basically, what new tool, and not specifically new, what tool do you gravitate towards? That's the bottom line. But I sort of fluff it up with this Audre Lorde quote because I think it's important, and it's introducing a little talk on tools. So
Yeah.
it's getting us into tools a little. So yeah, either way, you can do just a new tool that you're gravitating towards recently, or a tool that you think is important in dismantling the master's house.
Um, I really love that quote, but I'm not totally sure that I agree with it. Um, because also I agree with the changing flux of who is in control and who is not in control. I don't see that as either a fixed entity either. Um, but yeah, and I think about it a lot because I teach at a wealthy private school, and I'm sort of riddled with class issues, and I just because of the way that I grew up and the way that and the way that I live, and I think about what is the value of, not for me, but like say my students, and trying to sort of enact change in this completely privileged privileged in the way that people use that word as a sort of cruel thing, but also privileged in the wonderful world. I mean, there's just like amazing people that teach there and amazing tools, so like real privilege, but also privilege in terms of being the sort of master of that space. Yeah, but I don't know that I use any tool. I mean, I think the tool that I use in terms of enacting a dismantling is it's like so ineffective. I'm such a yeah, maybe I don't want to answer that part. I think I use humor a lot in my life and in my work. And I mean, there's I think humor necessarily undermines all spaces. That's sort of its game. But it also makes me into a clown, which is a sort of like maybe intercepting the hubris, any hubris that could come into a space. It kind of disrupts power structures. I disrupt my own power. So what I'm saying is actually I only dismantle my own power. And I don't know that it's a very effective for change method. Yeah.
Hey, all the power to you, man. That's a beautiful
Or
thing
none
you
of the
just said.
power to me. I have no power.
But
And I'm
I mean,
kind of
in
like
saying
to
that,
it.
I meant it touched me what you said in some.
Thank you.
I could relate to what you just said. Stephanie, what new toy do you suggest or gravitate towards?
Toys. I got this new Tesla drone. No, I'm kidding. I don't toy. I'm still maybe I'm like thinking that I'm this like Jungian theory of like humans are going through evolution. Like first we're fish,
Yeah,
in swimming in utero.
yeah,
Then we come out and we're just like worms. Then maybe we crawl and we're quadrupeds. Then we
yeah,
start walking, we move it like that. Each human, being in their life kind of mimics the evolution of humans as a species. I think I'm like devolving.
yeah,
I'm going from in my own work from working with film and video and writing to working with clay,
yeah,
which is, such an elemental, like literally dirt, mud, this like elemental material. And I'm almost exclusively making these really elemental shapes. Like if you gave a child a lump of clay, they would make, a ball or a tube. Basically that's all I make. So my new tool is like a really old tool. I mean, my new toy is a really old toy,
yeah.
which is, I guess, also a tool. Um,
But you answered it beautifully. That was good. What do you worry
Am I gonna
about when
get
you
a
go?
grade? Because I feel
Look
like
at
I'm in the high
I
80s. even I'm tired.
I'm the type of person who just goes, "Thanks, that was good." It's the my personality, and one person said, "Will you quit praising me after every answer?" It's like, I just do that. I like, "Thank you." The words you used touched me. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's not a great thing, but it is
Okay. I
fun.
still do want a grade, but
Yeah.
okay.
Well, no, I'll give you a great idea. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
I don't. Um, Bedtime is, like, such an incredibly holy experience for me. Um, and I'm not without worry or sorrow in my life, but when I go to bed, I just feel so grateful. I mean, one of the things that I worry about is, I just feel guilty all the time, even though I live in a really, really humble, and really careful way. I'm very conscious of not trying to impact, the environment terribly
Yeah.
or the people around me. But I still, even as a very not wealthy, person, feel like, "Wow, I can't," like, when I go to bed, I have, like, 4 pillows. I'm like, "I'm rich." I'm like that rat in, in the rolling in the garbage, like, "God, I'm so lucky." Um, yeah, because I just think there's so many people in this world for like, it's such an incredible luxury. So I go to bed, that's the not always when I wake up and not when I'm in my regular life, but usually when I go to bed, um, I feel so incredibly grateful. Actually, that's gonna make me cry, but I do. I often say, like, "You are so lucky you have this bed. So warm, so soft."
No, that's touching because, I always say if I tear up or the person I'm interviewed tears up, I know it's a good interview, and so there you go. Good, definitely, because I indeed teared up at the same moment because
Mhm.
I same thing, like, we have 8 or 10 pillows, it's like,
Yeah,
"Jeez."
yeah.
I mean, it's just it's a topic we're gonna get into in this, experimental film world, so you've already touched on it twice in such an immense way, but I don't wanna jump there quite yet. A poet said that artists, and when I say artists, I mean filmmakers, poets, literature, artists in general. Artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so that we can cope with what we don't like about the invention. So the question is why do humans ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though artists are broadcasting them to us?
Um, I don't think all the humans do ignore the hidden
Yeah.
psychic messages. Um, I also think sometimes, different cultures, different times, we've been more attuned to those kinds of messages, but also sometimes, being, too aware of all of the different layers of existence and what's happening, that can be pretty, like a pretty deadly space to be in. Sometimes, I mean, I think we all know, or I think most people have had a friend or a family member who, um, was maybe very in tune with a lot of hidden psychic messages, and then maybe went a little too far with holding on, recognizing, their, their lies monsters. Um, but yeah, I think artists absolutely are a certain kind of antenna, but I also think somehow, even though I think like to be an artist is, like just the best. So, such a lucky game to be able to play. So being quite arrogant about being an artist. I also think that probably bankers are doing something like that, and probably mechanics are doing something like that, and probably like in any kind of way that you dedicate your brain energy on a like the most, the majority of time that you spend thinking about something, you are being an antenna for something. My father was a body man, um, body man working on the auto bodies, but also mechanic. And there's so much sort of antenna antennic reading and expressing in that kind of work. Not just the aesthetics of like trying to repaint a car or get rid of um, like a dent or fix a motor, but recognizing like, I mean, and I guess it's something that we all do, and I'm sure other non-human animals do. We sort of try to assess a situation. We create a narrative like, oh, this person drives too far to the left and they've always got dents on the left side of their car. There's a sort of like imaginative antenna-like assumption that one has to do to effectively do their job, whether that job be writing a poem or, driving a bus. There's a lot of, yeah, I think we extend ourselves outside of like our body, all of the animals, not just humans, but fungi. Like there's always that leap and that sort of antennae at
You,
play. And I think it's a survival mechanism.
yeah, you anticipated two questions that are just about to come up. So you must have.
I'm like
do you,
at 97 now. I got a
do you
96.
think you have ESP just off the top of your head?
Yes, I know I do.
Yes, good. I'm glad. Okay, so Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can. Can you you really illustrated that? Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
No. No, and part of the reason, I mean, and I've tried. Lord knows I've tried. I have tried. And I think about it a lot. Okay, one reason I say no is because I really distrust memory. Every time you access a memory, you're rewriting it. I mean, there's so much really interesting neurological study of memory that kind of reinforces that assumption. But also for me, and I imagine many people that are, younger than 100, my memories are so, are like inextractable from photographs and documents of me. So that's, I don't have a real early memory. I feel like I do know people who are very good at remembering and have really nice early memories, but I'm not one of them. I'm also, because just my nature of like not necessarily believing, like feeling too true to myself. I when I think I have an early memory, I sort of doubt it. I'm like, well, probably I saw a photograph, or probably I heard that story, or probably, um, which is actually probably literally the truth for
Yeah,
most people when they think, it's somewhere else.
that's why I use that word conjure. But
Yeah.
Stephanie, could you tell me just briefly someone within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family who had an impact on you, was like a role model? Again, just briefly, and what specifically was that impact?
Um, so many people, but I think probably the one that feels maybe most obvious right now is my grandfather. Um, my grandfather was a tuba player, a musician, and he played jazz and he played classical, and he played, with the King and I. He played with Miles Davis and John Coltrane and on all of those early cool albums. And I lived with him off and on when I was little. My parents were very young when they had me. And like a lot of people, my grandparents helped raise me and my sister. Um, yeah, my grandfather was very, as you might imagine, very serious about listening, and particularly listening to music, where we would regularly just sit and listen to something. As a 5-year-old, as a 6 or 7-year-old, that's hard to do. Like, don't draw, don't roll around, just listen. That's the work. Sit and listen. Um, and I've totally internalized that, and I do it now, and to the point I really have to check myself, like, when I'm teaching or when I'm showing work, or, if people are, like, looking through their bag or moving around, I'm just like, "Stop moving, it's gonna be, like, over in half an hour, like, just sit and listen." Like, whatever that is where you learn how to, like, turn yourself off and take in somebody else's art for a little while. Yeah, my grandfather really taught me that.
That
Actually,
is
one time.
beautiful.
Yeah, he
Beautiful.
was beautiful. One time, when I had gone to college and I, went, like, went back to the town that I lived in, or not even the town I lived in, the town my mom lived in, and my grandparents didn't, and I was walking around, with a friend of mine, and I saw my grandfather sitting in a van on the side of the road, just parked, sitting in a, sitting in a van like people do. Um, and I hadn't seen him in a year. I had been at college or whatever, 6 months or something. And I hadn't expected to see him there. I wasn't going to visit him. He just happened to be in that town. And I knocked on the window and I was like, "Grandpa." And he was like, "Come in, come in, come in. Sure. Sit down. Sit down in the van, me and my friend Greg, the filmmaker Greg Bierman." And he so then, and we just sat and listened to, he was listening on the car radio to a symphony, and it was over, like in 20 minutes or something. And then it ended, and then he was like, "Oh, give me a hug and kiss. And what are you doing? And why are you here?" He was there because he took my grandmother shopping, but he's just stayed in the car while she went into somewhere because he wanted to listen to the piece of music. But it was so beautiful, and I was so happy my friend Greg got to see that. I was like, "That's my whole life right there for you. I'll say hi to you in 20 minutes. Just sit and listen for a minute."
That is a great lesson. Now, outside your immediate family, just briefly, I know there's probably lots, but just one person who was like a role model or had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
Um, yeah, so many. I feel so entirely raised by my people, my community, and my friends. Well, just millions. So it's so hard. I also feel like if I talk about one friend, I'll say one, because I just mentioned, no, I can't do it. It feels too, um,
That's all,
yeah, I'm gonna
that's
skip
all right.
that one.
That's totally fine. Were you raised a particular religion?
No, but I was very religious. My parents, um, aforementioned wolves that raised me, were not at all religious. Um,
Do
and
you
I
pray?
what?
Do you pray?
Oh, wait, let me finish that
Go ahead.
sentence. Yeah.
Sorry.
But
Go ahead.
from the time I was maybe 6 till 12, I think right around 12, I kind of broke up with God. I got really deeply religious. And I would go to whatever church. So I lived sometimes with my grandparents, sometimes with their mom, sometimes with my dad. And none of them were into God, and almost like kind of derisive about the idea of God. It's a little silly maybe. And my sister wasn't into it. I would go to any church that was in walking distance. I would go to any temple, anything I could get into. Like, I would just walk around and try to, like, get into a mass. And I was very, like, internally, even though certainly I didn't have like a real instruction in it. I don't think I really knew. I certainly, you know, couldn't, didn't have like any formal training, but I felt deeply uh connected to God, and I still do. I often make the joke that I just have a God-shaped hole in my heart, or a dog-shaped hole in my heart. Sort of same thing. And I think in a lot of ways my love of and sort of faith in art is really connected to that, whatever those impulses are. I don't know what that is, why some people are so desirous of what, people, what we call a seeker for in any other way. Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, witchcraft. I like it all.
Yeah. Do you pray?
And I do some kind of prayer, yeah. But
If
I don't want to, yeah.
God if God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
After I die, we gotta wait. Um, I think they will just like get down with me. We'll probably just have like a dance party. I think that's what I would like. I would like to like get on the big eternal dance floor of the soul of the afterlife. Just like really get down. Like
I'm
funky
there. I
smell
love
kind
it.
of get down.
I love it. Can you forget to die?
That's a good idea. Just be like, "Oh man, I forgot. I was gonna do that yesterday." I don't think so because we don't, I mean, you can forget to kill yourself. You'd be like, "Oh, I'll get to it tomorrow." But I don't think we have that much control over, um, yeah. Would that it were so. But then everybody would be forgetting. We'd just have like a culture of people like, "I'm still living. I'm gonna live forever."
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I don't believe in evil. Did our screens just change?
No, I think Clinton just
He's doing something. Okay. Um, I do not believe in that concept of evil, and not just in a sort of Nietzschean beyond good and evil way, but again, in just, like one organism. Humans are just one element of
yeah.
this, moving organism. We'll be gone sometime soon. We're like a mushroom, like an ocean, like a rainstorm. And that sort of notion of good and evil is just illogical. We can't say that, I don't know, is kudzu evil? I mean, I think humans are a little bit like kudzu, maybe as a species. We're not evil, but we are sort of an apex predator that has eradicated our, that thing which might keep us in check. But yeah, no, I just think, yeah, I don't believe in
Good.
evil.
That was good, Stephanie. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And again, I'm going to set up with a
With an
few more.
enemy?
Yeah. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'm going to set up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. I know, again, it's a lot of
All
white.
those dudes. I love all those. I love to hear what
I'm
men have to
sorry.
say.
You made me very aware of that, and I've been aware of it for years. I'm sorry.
You never get to hear the male's perspective.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And I could have dropped all their names, but I'm curious, before you answer, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? How would you respond to the Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I want to reference the contemporary thinker Aparna Janal, who's a
Okay.
doctor who lives in North Carolina. She's always says like, kill him with kindness.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in enemies, even Alan Watts's sort of softball against that space is not really for me. I don't really have enemies. If I had an enemy, I don't know. I mean, again, it could be on any day. Like sometimes people want to fight, I've got a little street in me. It might be fun to like throw down.
That's good.
Or not, but I don't, I think a lot of times I was walking with a friend the other day, and they were going through a breaking up with their girlfriend, and she kept saying like she's just toxic. Oh no, not only well, she did say she's toxic, but she's withholding. You know, she's just like withholding, and I just kept thinking, that person just has a different way of expressing love than you want. They're just doing it differently. Even evil, or whatever the enemy. I just don't think that mindset of somebody else is bad is really too helpful. So if somebody feels like your enemy, I would I would try to be the Aparna, kill them with kindness, but probably I would be the wimpy, just try to avoid them. That's what I would probably do.
I love Kill 'Em with Kindness because
Yeah.
it reminds me of Ram Dass. He said, I'm having a real hard time loving George Bush. It's like fill in the blank. Like,
Yeah, that's
I'm having a
beautiful.
real hard time loving Putin right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful because, like, it shows you, oh, the work is you should be trying,
Yep.
and it might be
Exactly.
difficult. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, we don't have to go to a play, don't go if you don't wanna go, you know? I mean, yeah, I like to see a tree in the woods, and I like to see a tree in a photograph, and I like to see somebody paint a tree. They're all different trees, and, when you see a play of people living life, you're seeing how one person thought about life. So you're not necessarily seeing life, you're seeing, Jean Genet thinking about life, or, Sarah Kane, what she thought, like what she thought as far as a play. Um, yeah, and again, we don't need to go to any of those, and probably most people don't, except for maybe the case of television, you know? Um,
So
yeah.
the deeper question really is, what was the motive of the cave artist for you, the cave musicians, the cave dancers? Not so necessarily what Herzog got from the New Yorker article, anthropologist, but your hunch, your guess.
Is hunch a kind of a cave joke? Is that a pun in there? Like, you kinda have to hunch to
No,
get in
no,
there?
the
I bet
the
they're all
hunch,
hunching, that's why they're like that, because the cave ceiling is low.
yeah, the hunch is from
I
Lily
know,
Tomlin.
I'm joking.
No, Lily Tomlin said reality might just be a collective hunch.
Yeah, that's a very good quote. I like that one. Um, and not just because it's a woman. I do really
Right.
just like it. Um, I think all of those utterances, the dancing in the cave, the, El Castillo, are, like, trying to grapple with existence, just
Yeah.
trying to, grapple with it, like, "What is this? If I draw this antelope, maybe I'll understand it." But it's also maybe a way of, trying to communicate with others when maybe language wasn't, in a, in another way, separate from language. We don't always, or dancing is thinking without language and is expressing something that you feel about life, about worship, about corporeality, about music. So yeah, I think it's sort of grappling with our senses, what's coming into our senses, sense interface.
Stephanie, what first attracted you to pursue, and you can fill in the blank, whatever you want to call it, career as a writer? I mean, you're many things: filmmaker, writer, poet, teacher. But let's writer. What first attracted you to pursue being a writer? Like, what was the tipping point? You're growing up reading, and then you go, "Oh, I can do this, and I'm going to do it for my career," kind of.
Mhm. Um Well, I know this isn't exactly what you're asking, but I feel like I've been a very poor steward of my career. If my career is as an artist, the implication of that as a professional, my career is teaching because that's how I make money. Um, all this money. Um, but, yeah, I mean, art is certainly my main work, but, not necessarily my main career. I don't
Yeah.
um, the way that I was able to decide that I would dedicate myself to making art, um, was there was never any question. When I was very little, when I was, like, 6 years old, I was like, "I'm a poet." Um, I mean, I think when I was 6, I was like, "I have to learn how to type," because I think I thought typing was publishing. Um, but, after I got over that hurdle, I was good to go. Um, and it has to do with, um, faith and religiosity and, a sort of theological fanaticism. Um, yeah, I'm really interested in the Christian mystics, like
Yeah.
Teresa de Avila, um, and the way that, they were allowed to be really very far out, very, powerful and unexpected and, borderline what we might call lunatic. Um, and it was sort of accepted. I feel like I have that sort of fanaticism making art. And maybe it's one of the reasons that I play so fast and loose with the career aspect of my art making, because I actually secretly think it's like, you know, God's work.
Beautiful. That is super. So a screenwriting teacher told me that great art, great film is when you clearly see the intention of the maker. Another filmmaker said, no, great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Um, in my work or my creative process? So
Well,
different.
yeah, again, you put it in the context you want. You could put it in what you could do both or
Mhm.
what you feel comfortable talking about.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a big difference between what my work looks like and what my process would be. Um, and intention, um, is, um yeah, I'm a very intentional worker. Um, but, you know, different media calls for different, like, how that intention is iterated is really different depending on the medium. Like, one of the things recently, in the last, maybe 4 or 5 years, I've been making ceramics. I just mentioned, like, the de-evolution of my art practice. Um, and one of the things that's incredibly, radical about that for me and really revelatory and exciting is that I can, listen to music while I'm working or talk to somebody, um, and it's not anything I could do with writing or making a film or video. It's just like I can't have that sort of bifurcated focus. And so when I'm listening to music and making something, it dawned on me that it's a completely um, different intention. Like there's a little more softness, there's a little work that's just the hands that my brain can go away for a little bit, and maybe my hands have to hold the intention of making the shape or smoothing it or, um, and so, yeah, I don't know if that's less intention or that the intention has moved from, wherever my intellect is to the intellect of my hands. Um, and then the way that my work looks, I think, yeah, I mean, it's a fool's game trying to figure out what people think about your film, about your work, about your film or your writing. But I think, in a very, like, a gross generalization, I assume that most people that, experience my work would recognize it as pretty intentional. There's a lot of work, and I almost am getting close to, like, quoting a film of mine in which the main character, is talking about John Cage, and she says, yeah, I can't remember the exact line. She says, "I see his intention stamped all over that work."
Right.
You
Yeah.
know? So that the borderline between the chance operation and the, like, lack of, like, authorial, presence is a little bit undermined by the clarity of the conceptual intention of that act.
Really, really well put. I totally agree with you, and I love Cage, and he's influenced me a lot. And, Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your audience when you're making your art?
Like, all the time. That's all I think about. That's, who it's for. It's not for me. I'm not, like, like, pleasuring myself in a corner. I'm imagining an audience. And again, now I am really gonna quote myself, which is, like, it's almost impossible when I do interviews because a lot of my, work also speaks to those things. But I have a film called Dogs, which is just 2 dog puppet heads, and they have a conversation about God and about art. Um, and, one of the dogs says, like, "I'm always imagining an audience," and what that audience is, like, the most thrilling, funny, brilliant, trusting being, you know? Like, I have an imagined audience, which is this, just a wonderful viewer and sensor and feelinger, and I'm, like, always talking to them, and they
It's
are
really
God.
Yeah, it is beautiful. I saw you in a short YouTube video being interviewed, and the audience was interactive, and it really reminded me of Ruth Draper. She says, like, the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in way of imagination and creative power. It's
Uh,
high aspirations. How do you accomplish that?
um Just work hard. I don't know how, I mean, I think people, and that's not the answer. Sometimes people work soft and
Yeah,
they, also get it. I'm
yeah.
sort of the Tina Turner, I never like to do anything nice and easy, um, camp, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of art, it's also like what does or does not seduce a person, also has to do with the time in which you're working, the, sort of like the cultural zeitgeist and what people are sort of wanting to tune into, cult of personality, who made it, and how much is somebody going to, give to you. There's so much more, um, respect and faith given to a work when the body that made it is, for whatever reason, respected, is famous, is whatever the thing that a human wants. Um, so that, yeah, even though I, am sort of old-fashioned and in a kind of a very embarrassing, purist sense of the work is just unto itself. Um, But, obviously, I don't have, like, throngs of viewers. Like, what is Beyoncé doing that really connects with so many people, that is really deeply profound, um, and beautiful and brilliant, and, yeah, she is of that Tina Turner hard work, like, crazy hard worker. Yeah, I don't, like, there's an element of, yeah, what the world is doing that's, and allowing wanting yourself to be maybe more, you know,
Yeah,
taken by the world, like, be of the world.
yeah.
For the Ruth Draper quote, I pick 1 or 2 people out of the audience every 5 shows, as opposed to Beyoncé, like 500,000. I can't get them all. I would love to,
Yeah.
get them all in there, but yeah, too weird.
Now, you brought up this word extension earlier, and it applies if we can sort of agree that everything we invent or think about, not agree, just think about that clothing extends our skin, knife and fork extends our teeth, the shutter in a camera might be an extension of our eyelid, philosophy or religion might be an extension of consciousness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Whether it's a pencil or a pen or a keyboard, what humanness is extended by the writing utensil?
Yeah, that's McLuhan, right? That extension theory.
Yeah.
Um, I Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because as soon as when you started that sentence, I was like, God, I hate writing by hand now. And I feel so sad about it. Like I can barely write. I'm so it's like David Cronenberg, like I'm like body machine, like half hand. I just sometimes I can't remember something if I don't type it,
Oh,
you know?
totally. That's
Um,
me all the way.
It's amazing how quickly we are like, bring it in there. But yeah, I used to always write, and I still do. Like I write all the time while I'm watching a film, but I'm much more fluid with typing, because literally my hands don't do it well. And then they does it, and I can't read it. It's like, what is that nonsense? um,
Look,
but
look
I
at
think it extends.
same here. I take 5 pages every interview.
Yeah, I
And
can't really see it.
yeah, well, it's the same thing. And then
Yeah,
I go back, what is that letter?
yeah, yeah. It's funny, we would think it was hours, we would be able to read it.
But I think the act of doing it
No, I realize
helps us
that's yeah,
retain it in our head. We
yeah.
want to think that at least.
Right, um, yeah, I like to think about, like, somebody like Keith Haring, like, such a, like, prolific doodler,
Yeah.
and just, like, over and over and over again, that gesture, um, like making the little human or making the little human. I just imagine, and I think I read or somehow know that, from the get, he was like just a compulsive doodler. And yeah, that extension of his imagination, sort of like cartooning his existence, is really poignant to me. I definitely mm, extend. Yeah, I feel like um, typing or writing extends my thought, but not entirely because the writing is different than thought or just thought. It's the writing. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it's sort of like the way that I said that I sometimes can't remember something. And so I'll type it. Sometimes the way that a sentence or a turn of phrase or a thought is constructed is specific to the medium of writing, it being on the page or going to be on the page, different from the way I might talk and different from the way I might think. Have a little
Well,
bit.
we have a commonality in the Ann Arbor Film Festival. It's celebrating its 60th year this year, and I've been involved in it for about 30 of the years. If me and you and George Manupelli time travel back 60 years ago, and we want the festival to be more inclusive or exclusive. And I'll just set it up with, I asked Chick Strand the same question. She was starting Canyon Cinema around the same time in San Francisco. She told me they were trying to recreate their 11-cent movie going experience by showing a newsreel, a cartoon, and then an experimental film. Brackage came along and said, nope, don't show the other stuff, just show experimental film. So would you lean more towards being inclusive or exclusive?
I'm sorry, who's Manupelli?
George Manupelli started the Ann Arbor Film Festival
Okay,
60 years ago. Yeah.
thanks.
He's the founder. So we're like sitting around bullshit and saying, hey, what should we do here?
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I certainly don't want to be anywhere near Stan Brackage.
Well, I just
I'd
set him
much
up.
rather hang out with Chick Strand, so I'm just going
Right.
to go
I'm
vote
just
on
saying
her.
that's what Chick
No,
Strand
I get it.
was
Yeah.
told. But again, you could examine. I went to a Canyon Cinema screening probably 50 years ago, and it was probably all experimental film. So, I mean, it's a simple thing. Do we want to show Betty Boop in a Hitchcock clip and then, Chick Strand, or do we want to just show Chick Strand, Maya Deren, and Bruce Conner?
Um, I don't know, and I don't care, but what I do care about is I like to know beforehand. I don't like when it's going to be a certain kind of show and then they put some other things in
No.
there, because some days you might want to see only Chick
Yeah.
Strand, and some days you might want to see Betty Boop.
Good.
But sometimes like you go to an exercise class and it's supposed to be a vinyasa yoga, and then it's all yin, and you're like,
That's
wait a minute.
that was a good answer. And here's the other one is, what's the services and disservices of marginalizing experimental film? Jackson Pollock was on the cover of Life magazine in 49. Regular folks could start establishing an aesthetic on experimental painting. There was no Maya Deren on Life magazine covers. Generally, it's privileged. I call them rich art kids. You said, you brought up that term and you weren't afraid to say whatever it was you said earlier. Wealthy private school, whatever we want to call them, you know what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's bad to be a rich art kid. That develop, it's usually that entitled privileged class who develops an avant-garde aesthetic and dominates the experimental film world. Any comment?
Okay, a lot. Well, Jackson Pollock on the cover of Life magazine. Thank you, CIA, for funding that.
That is, you got that right.
And also that's true, not just a
No.
not just conspiracy. Yeah, I do like the initial question, which was the pros and cons of being
What's the
marginalized.
services and disservices of marginalizing experimental film? Yes,
Yeah, I mean, I'm very into that. I like this Bell Hooks essay about marginalization and writing from the margins. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes being a small, ignored art form, group of people, country, kind of mushroom is to your benefit, and sometimes, yeah, it's just too sad to be constantly overlooked. Did you read The Mushroom at the End of the World?
I haven't, but tell me about it.
There's a mushroom that I'm going to remember the name of in 1 second that people become very interested in picking. And it grows in some places in Japan, and then in like the Pacific Northwoods, and all of these different. The whole book is really like totally fascinating. It's a lot about mushrooms, but it's also the matsutake mushroom. It's also about the economics of like cultural diversity and like actual economics of pickers and sales and the market, and not stabilizing the market. Like the matsutake mushroom doesn't have a stable price. The price is made each day when the pickers of the mushrooms interact with the buyers. And then there's this shipping and all of this, but it's somewhat of a delicacy. Also, interestingly, is the matsutake mushroom grows when forests have been either burned or ruined by humans or taken over by beetles. It specifically grows in the ravaged spaces. But anyway, so the matsutake gets really popular, right? And so in thinking about like when something becomes popular, it becomes desired, it becomes mainstreamed, it might become a little bit more watered down. But I mean, Jackson Pollock or any of those people that were able to earn money because of that sort of CIA Cold War initiative to popularize American painting. I can't deny that along with popularity might come some healthcare, some money, some stability. And so, yeah, those are the services and disservices.
Thank you so much. Stephanie, this has been so fun. And I asked for 90 minutes and we only got 15 more. Are you willing to go longer, or you got to cut it in 15?
Let's see, I'm a little bit fading out. I just don't want to get too
Okay.
slap
Let's
happy.
how about
I'm
if we cut
enjoying
it?
myself. I just know like my brain is shutting down. I
Yeah,
couldn't
we'll
remember
cut it.
Matsukake mushroom, and I only read that book like a week ago.
Well, we'll cut it in 15 and stay to the promise for. So a one poet said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Oh, I'm so English. Like
What
I
what
just, yeah, I speak
what
English. I think in
what
English. Every now
yeah,
and then some Japanese and Spanish jumps in there. But
what
even in my
form?
brain, it's about language. It's about
Yeah.
the English language.
But the question really is what form is your inner consciousness in?
Oh, I thought you said what language is your
Well,
inner
no,
con.
I did, but it's like the metaphor of the word language.
Okay. I don't
Yeah.
think language is a metaphor for form, but I'll take it. I mean, I actually thought that was interesting because I do think maybe some people's internal language might be a little more made up or fluid or imaginative than mine. And I often feel like, oh, I'm really, really so beholden to the English language.
Yeah.
But it's actually because I love the idea of using it as a mutable material. Okay, but form, my internal form probably is all dialogue
Yeah,
or
that's good.
majority dialogue. I think my
Yeah.
main form is dialogue, and a lot of my artwork is dialogue. And I think the way internally I'm often having dialogues. There's something oppressive about the monologue. So even in my internal space, I kind of, split it, leaven it.
Moshe Feldenkrais works with movement and healing. He says it's literally possible to identify weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
I really believe that. I agree with that. And then, did I do that? Oh, weakness I turned into a strength. Um, yeah, see, this is a problem. I'm getting a little slap happy. The weakness that I turned into a strength is actually not turning anything into a strength.
That is smart. I love that. Finally, someone's taken that a little farther than it's so evident. Tell me one major element that your creation, your creative process, your work, your career, however you want to put it, one major element that stayed the same and one major element that's changed in the time you've done this.
Yeah, that's great. The major element that stayed the same is the presence of language in everything, and
Yeah.
the way that it's present in all of it, almost all the videos, all of the films, and even so much as again in my new medium of ceramics, thinking about space and three-dimensionality like has been so challenging and so fun for me, as opposed to drafting along a linear like temporal timeline. And at first I felt like, oh yeah, I'm really kind of grappling with like letting go of the line and whatever that shaping of that is. But actually, about like a year after I started making them, I all of a sudden started putting so much language in there so that all of the pieces have this sort of array of title options that basically read as a poem. So even in my attempt to eradicate language and create something that was just purely spatial, visual, structural balance, I snuck language in there. So language is what has stayed, and what has changed. God, I hope everything, but maybe not. What has changed? One thing that has changed, but maybe slowly, it's not a radical change, is my attention and desire in my own work and in my attraction to other works, my move towards narrative.
Towards a narrative. I
Towards
see.
narrative. Yeah, I used to not be. And, I was very interested in reading work that was really disruptive of narrative. and listening to work that was, like Alvin Lucier or something, and looking at paintings, Helen Frankenthaler or something when I was younger. And now I'm like, give me a Degas horse painting, give me an opera and like a novel by Balzac, and I'm good. I
Wow.
really I'm super into thinking about the structure, narrative structure. And even though the 2 feature-length narratives that I've made are still not yet what might be read as more traditional narrative, I think they're nearing that, and my mind is nearing that. And my recent play, Trial in the Woods, is quite, it's like undeniably a narrative with, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, because I sort of skipped over. I would love to do a part 2 someday with you because I skipped over. One filmmaker said, cinema is much too rich a medium to be left to storytelling
Mhm.
because it's basically 130 years old, and basically
Good
it's been
baby.
filming plays the whole time.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, just briefly and quickly, have you ever read Finnegan's Wake out loud with a group of people?
No, I haven't, but I recently read Gertrude Stein's The Making of the Americans out loud with people. We didn't get through the whole thing because of COVID, but we had several weeks. Like, was it every week or every month? I can't remember. The musician Christian Weeks organized it, but yeah, it was really profound. I mean, I think
In a room with people, not on Zoom, you mean?
no, that was in a room with people, and
Oh,
we stopped it when it became COVID.
yeah.
Because we wanted to be in live. And I don't know if you've read that book, but it's huge, and it's much more formally disruptive than than Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah. But
And
I'd love to
it's
invite
so
you.
beautiful.
Yeah, I'd love to invite you because I've hosted a Finnegan's Wake reading club live with people in a room for 25 years. And then for the last 2 years, it's gotten way better because in Zoom, we've
Get
got
other
people.
people.
We got people in Dublin, Austin, Texas, and it's quite
Yeah, I would
amazing.
love to come, and I would love to do it.
It would be fun. So we're closing out here. A couple more questions. How do you find peace of mind?
Music, walking in the woods, meditating, yoga, talking to friends. I'm a
Hey,
simple girl.
we got a lot in common. I love all those. Stephanie, if you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I'd say, stop crying. Get it together. I was a weird kid.
Martha Colburn?
Yeah, I don't know her. Well, I've met her, I
Yeah,
guess.
but you know her films. She said, "What do you mean?" I'd say, "Quit drinking all that peppermint schnapps."
That's good. God, that is such a kid alcohol. Like, I can imagine
Oh
a kid
my
being
god.
like, "I wanna be an alcoholic." That's
Yeah. So these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions, just in a couple words off the top of your head.
okay.
Who started it all?
Yeah, I'm supposed to be fast, huh? I guess songbirds.
Oh, I love that. I've never had that answer. Second one is, are we going to make it?
Am I gonna get a refrigerator out of this if I get them all right? I got one
No,
down.
but I
Are
will
we gonna
send
make
you.
it as a human species? No. We're almost
Okay.
done.
But I gotta answer your question. Are you gonna I'm gonna send you a refrigerator magnet
All
for
right.
for my book that's called Strange Questions, Experimental Film is Conversation.
Yes.
And
All right.
I
Good.
never give these out. So you can send me your mailing address and I'll send it to you. Okay.
Okay.
You did number 2. The third one is, where do we put it?
Back in the earth.
Beautiful. Who's cleaning it up?
My mother.
Oh my God. We had the answer the other day and we both cried. I can't believe that is so beautiful. And the last one is from Alan Watts. Is it serious?
Yes, and absolutely no. Same
Yeah.
time.
Well, that's Frank Zappa. He says, I'm very serious about being not serious. And he was born in Baltimore.
Oh, he was? I'm
Yeah,
very serious about play, so that's maybe the switcheroo, same difference.
play is an important word. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Yeah, I didn't know this was a thing, but somebody actually got angry with me about it. Like literally, like I was 35 years old and somebody told me that was a thing. I mean, I think it was like until I was 15 that I realized it usually should be in the bathroom.
Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
That I never had and I never want.
It's good, you never had it, but you never want it.
Um, a spouse.
That is a valid answer. Thank you so much. And just a couple more. Joseph Boyes said, make the secrets productive. Lou Welsh said, guard the secrets, constantly reveal them. But it was Thornton Wilder in 28. He said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Stephanie, it's been truly enlightening. I really appreciate it. You laid your cards on the table. I'm not insinuating you haven't answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Um, like One-Eyed Jacks and Suicide Kings.
But I don't know what that is a reference to. What is that a reference to?
Yeah, I laid my cards on the table.
Oh, One-Eyed Jacks. Oh, and Suicide. I see.
Suicide Kings, you were a poker player. I lived as a poker player for a while. One-Eyed Jack, they're the profile, and Suicide King, they have the knife through their head.
That's what it's all about for you. Yeah, that's cool. What's just two more? Boy, we got 3 minutes and two more questions. Okay. This is fun. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
I don't know if it's a shift, and I'm not trying to be too negative, but I hope that Greta Thunberg will be able to inspire more young people to be more like heretical about the environmental damage somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, raise consciousness and awareness. I love it.
Or more than raise consciousness and awareness, like get really, yeah.
Go to have action.
Yeah.
Yeah. What gives you the most optimism?
I don't know. I think maybe I'm not very optimistic. I have joy, so much joy and gratitude, but I don't have optimism for, I don't, like I don't know for what. I don't know. It doesn't work. I don't, yeah. Like, do I have optimism suggests hope, and hope suggests a sort of that there's something to want.
But do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Probably meaning. I don't know. I mean, I don't pursue any of those really. I just, yeah, I just move through the world.
Yeah.
I should probably be more systematic in my pursuits. But I'm not. And it's kind of a willful, like non-self focus and interest in, I don't know, like Candide or something. Maybe I think I'm just like a wandering mendicant.
Well, actually, this question I skipped is appropriate for that. It's like Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me.
Cecil is my love. I'm for that.
So you get it. So this is a stupid question to end, but it's applicable to what you just said. I know it's both and it depends. But is art making more self-expression or more one is a vehicle for whatever culture or technology is dominant?
But I think it's yeah, right, okay, so right, of course it's both, and I know you don't want me to say that because you just said it. I
No,
really
no, you
think
can say
it's
it's both. The hidden question is, can art making be egoless?
wait, why is that a hidden question? That's just a
Well,
separate
that
question. I
because
think,
no, you could tackle them both then. Yeah. Yeah.
okay, so both. It's both because people make very different art, thank God, and so there is that art that is, s for just for the culture and, like, that system of pressures that Manuel de Landa is writing about, and, um but then as far as egoless, if you believe in the ego, which, I don't know, in terms of like Freud, the id, ego, and superego, it's a little bit hokey concept of the self. Um, yeah, or maybe too vague a term is a kinder way to say that. I think that what Cecil Taylor said is he is sort of professing to be without ego in that scenario. And I think I was professing as well to be without it. Um, but again, certainly it's all over. I saw Cecil Taylor play for Gil Evans' memorial service at the Jazz Church in New York, and he was you know, pretty old at the time. He had like three long gray dreads holding on, and he was playing, and coming to the end. I'm going to play so you can see it. Coming to the end, and he started getting up and moving off the piano bench and grabbed his coat and just walked away. It was a really great ending. It was just like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
whenever
know. I
I
mean,
see
the ego is
yeah,
like there's this old concept of like art is all ego. This is
yeah,
about me and it's
yeah,
expressing what I feel and what I think. But even, going back to the cage example or Cecil, like even that work is with ego if ego is just the self. If ego is the much maligned evil character, then yes, it can be.
yeah.
But ego could just be that body that made it.
Yeah. It's
Mhm.
amazing because you've helped me, which I love, is when someone helps me really break down the words in the questions. Because, I asked, can the art be egoless for quite a while, and everybody go, no, no, no. And then finally, one person said, great art is egoless. And
Uh-huh.
I like that because it had a universality to it. Like, why does so many people like a particular type of music? Like, let's just say our commonality in the love of Cecil Taylor. But
Mhm.
in general, he's not selling or is
He's not
known as
Beyonce.
Keith Jarrett or whoever else is in the jazz piano world. But it's important that he's reached us. And like you said, we could say, because there's this term that Freud brought up, and I loved your 2 words, hokey and vague. Because sometimes I follow up and I go, "Was Freud right?" This big hotshot Hollywood director goes, "That's beyond my pay grade."
Oh, that's good.
But it is fun for me to ask someone these questions, and they pay attention and listen to the words. They hear the question and they can go, "Yes, no, blah, blah," and that's
Mhm.
fine. But when you really help me understand the words, it helps move the whole project forward. Like, now we're understanding how the words can be I can ask the question differently or with different words or continue to ask it the same way I have for 40 years. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's fun.
Are
And
they the same questions that you've asked?
pretty much I have 150 questions. I basically get through about 40 with each person.
Mhm. Is it
And
random pull or you follow?
no, it's a certain order, but it changes because some people fight the questions.
Mhm, mhm.
And some
For fun.
people they just answer yes or no. And
Mhm.
so it's forever growing. And I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot of your peers, poets and filmmakers, you know, you could line up your answers next to theirs, and it's sort of fun. Like I was gonna say, Abigail Childs, you know her or her films. I said, "What language is your inner dialogue in?" She goes, "I wish I knew,"
Mhm.
which I think is a fun
Yeah,
answer. You
it's
know,
good.
people will say, you know, my mother's voice or, you
Mhm.
know, TV commercials or
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
Your literature base, I mean, your language base, and you said,
Right.
English. That's fine. That's what's implied is what language means English, you know, Spanish, whatever.
Mhm.
But thank you so much. This has
Thank you.
really
It's
been.
an interesting project. I feel
Are
honored to
you
be part of
Are
it.
you going to Ann Arbor in
I
March in a
can't. I
couple weeks?
never go.
You've
Yeah,
never gone, even though they've shown your films.
they've shown my
Wow.
films a lot through the years. And then even like for the 50th anniversary, one of mine was like part of the touring for that celebration.
How cool. That's what
Um,
I did. I
yeah.
did I host a lecture at the 50th that's called rooted not retro. So it's sort of
Mhm.
like a retrospect with these kind of questions and the
Hmm. Oh,
audience
that's nice.
talk, talking about the festival. But then a lot of our peers, the Echo Park Film Center, I've worked with a lot. My favorite was that we had in common was New Nothing Cinema
Oh
in
yeah, I've
San.
shown at both of those places. Knew Nothing. Yeah, but the Knew
I
Nothing
love,
is no more, right? Michael Walsh was doing that for a little bit. Steve Polta had some hand in that for a little
yeah.
bit.
There was a few people involved with New
Are they
Nothing.
no more?
I don't know. I would like to. I mean, I used to go up there every year and show films, but
'Cause
I
they had the
haven't.
Know Nothing, and then they had the New Nothing,
Right, right.
right?
Yeah,
I
I
think
was.
so. San
Yeah,
Francisco.
it is confusing. There was both, and then the
Yeah.
other one was, yeah, Steve Polta at San Francisco Cinematheque too.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's a great network across the world of people who will show these films. So
Mhm. Yeah. No, the only like, I don't go just I can't really afford it, you know?
yeah,
I go when festivals fly me out and put me up,
yeah,
not because of a diva thing, just, I'm
totally
really
understand.
yeah,
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 yeah.
can't always yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. I hope our dialogue continue on and on forever.
So nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.